Hey everyone, quick video today. Just going to show you how I make some quick and easy bases for your horde armies. Okay, so here is everything we're going to need. What I love about this approach when you are building a lot of minis or trying to do sort of 50 minis at once or 20 minis at once is when you are assembling your models, you really want to be able to put them straight onto the base. You don't want to have to deal with sub-assemblies or having the bases separate and gluing them on with super glue later. I much prefer to just be able to assemble everything at once, use plastic cement the whole way through. So this approach is really great for that. I've just got a couple of pre-built Cursed City skeletons here to show you how it works with the minis attached, and then I've also got a couple of plain bases for if you want to do some like centerpiece models or a squad leader or something like that, and have a little bit more elevation. So I'll show you how that's done as well. Some of the materials we're going to need, so we've got some thin cork here and some slightly thicker cork. We have some PVA or wood glue. We have some mixed sort of sand and stone, so a bit of variety in there. I'll link in the description something similar that you can use. We have some static grass, but it's very mossy, as you can see, so we'll use that towards the end. And in terms of the paints you'll need, just got some Mechanicus grey, so any sort of mid-tone grey will be fine. We have some Nuln Oil black wash. We have some Agrax Earthshade wash, and we have some Rakarth flesh as well. Aside from that, we've got a couple of brushes here, which is one just for I use for my glue, like a terrible brush, something for washes, and then just any sort of serviceable dry brush that you can find. And with all those things in hand, you're going to be able to get through a lot of bases really fast with this technique. All right, with that out of the way, let's get going. So the first thing we want to do is, once your models are assembled on their base, just get a bit of the PVA glue. It doesn't need to be thinned down or anything, you can just use it straight, and we'll just get our terrible old brush and start applying that all over the bases. So when your model's assembled, just paint around the feet. It doesn't matter if you're a little bit messy, it will all work out in the end. So we just apply it to the base there, front and back. Done. All right, now we'll grab a bit of our cork that we had earlier. So we'll just tear off a few random chunks here and there. So we'll stick those down onto the base of this one here. Just find anywhere you can see a gap, chuck that down there. And for our larger bases, we might rip off a few bigger chunks. So look here. Some wide bits. Okay, and I like to just flip it, find a side that I like the look of, and I'll just plonk that straight in the middle there. And for this one, it's a little bit wide, so we'll just rip a bit off the edge and we'll put that there. And then if we want to add a bit more interest, we'll just add a bit of glue to the top. We'll get some thinner pieces, round them out, chuck them on top there. Like that, and like that. Should be pretty good. So you can use super glue for this, something like a Gorilla Glue or super glue, just to speed up your process. When I'm doing big batches, I don't really mind too much about drying time. By the time I've done my 20th model or I've assembled something, I'm kind of close to being dry anyway, so I just use PVA in this case. So next we'll just add a little bit more glue to the top of the bits that we just applied. that. And now the fun begins. So we just get our gravel and we just dunk it in there, tap it off a little bit, just let it shake off. Don't tap it too hard, we don't want that cork falling off. It's only PVA glue holding it together at the moment. Get our second one, dunk it in, just let all the different rock sizes get on there, it's no problem. And for these bigger bits, we'll just sort of chuck them in and throw a bit of sand over the top like that. And then we'll pull that out and just give it a slight twist off like that. There we go. And do the same for this one. Okay. And that is step one done, super fast. And now we just give that a little bit of time to dry. I think for PVA glue, I like to leave it for at least an hour just to let things settle down. Okay, so we let that glue dry for a little bit, holding all that sand and gravel and cork in. And then once we did that, I just gave them a quick primer. It doesn't really matter what color, there is no specific color requirement on how you prime it. I happen to have run out of black and white, so I just used a Xandri dust and Wraithbone primer in this case, so I've done that there. As you can see, we just spray straight over that basing work that we did earlier, straight over the top of the cork. And keeping it really simple. And once we've done that, we will move on to applying a bit of paint. All right, so we'll water down some of the grey paint that sort of mid-grey that we had earlier. So we just grab a bit of that, put it on your wet palette or whatever you like to use. Water it down a bit so it's pretty runny. And then just slap that down onto the base. Doesn't have to be perfect. We can get it. You can leave some of the other colors underneath. The great thing about painting natural features is that the color does vary quite a bit. So it doesn't really matter if we have a bit of brown showing through or a bit of other colored grey, other tones of grey or black. All of it's just fine. Just cover most of it and you'll get a good result. Okay, those are dried off enough now. We're going to get our Rakarth flesh next. Now this is, like, in my opinion, a really essential color for painting sort of rock and stone. It's just that sort of fleshy grey color. We want to get the brush quite dry to make this work. And all we're going to do is grab the base and just give a really light dusting over the gravel there on that stone. So just brush it over there. We have that little elevated section at the front, so we'll give that a little bit of a coat, focusing on those bigger rocks to make sure that they really pop out and we get that difference in tone. It'll be a bit easier to see on this piece, I think. So we're just hitting the edges, just giving a bit of variation in colour. Getting those bits of gravel at the top, bits of sand. Sorry, my lighting's not great. It's just become quite dark since I've been waiting for all this to dry. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. You can see we've got a couple of variations in tone there to highlight where those little bits of sand and rock have gone. Okay, so once that dry brush layer has dried off properly, we are just going to do the bit that starts to bring it all together. So we're going to grab our Nuln oil or whatever black wash you like to use. We'll get a good generous whack of it on there, and then we just slop it onto the base. And that should just soak in between some of those rocks, add that extra layer of color and tone. Try not to cover absolutely everything in it, just sort of patch it on there, and I'll show you why in a minute. We'll put a little bit there, just really trying to get into those deepest recesses of the base. Okay, and while that's still wet, you don't have to worry about that drying off. We'll grab our Agrax Earthshade and we'll do the same. Just try to get some of the areas that you didn't hit with the Nuln oil. Grab your Agrax Earthshade and just pop that down. Again, just giving you a bit more variety in colour. See there, we've got a bit of a browner stain there with some darker colour there. Now this step's optional, but I do quite like to do this just to add a little bit more pop. As I go back to my Rakarth flesh once I've done that, grab a little bit on the brush, just neat is fine. We don't need to dry brush it. And I just go back over the base and I look for a few points where I think it would benefit. So I can see some stones sort of jutting out there. I just touch a little bit on there, a little bit on there, grab a bit on that corner, a bit of a stone there, a bit at the back there, just touching it on. And this one I'm just dabbing around the edges, just for fun. A few bits of rock that are sort of jutting out, we can add that to them. There we go. Okay, now this is looking ready for the last couple of steps. So it's really important from this point, once you've put your grey down, you've given it that quick dry brush, chucked your washes on, and then added a few highlights to let it really dry well. We don't want anything to be wet for this next bit. Okay, and almost at the end, what we do here is we just grab our mini or our base, get a bit of this PVA, and then we just create like a pattern. Just think of how moss would grow near rocks. So we put it in the recesses and maybe running around the rocks a little bit. And then once we're happy with our pattern, we just dunk it in the grass. Alright, so onto our final step. This is just getting some black rim bases, which is pretty straightforward, but I just wanted to show this paint I'm using, this Vallejo paint. I found after doing hundreds and hundreds of black rim bases, I was always running out of Abaddon black paint. It's getting expensive. I've had that one bottle of paint for probably over a year, and I've painted hundreds and hundreds of bases. So if you do like black rims, I recommend you invest in some good paint like that. It's really thick. It dries sort of flat. It flattens itself out, and you only really need one layer, which is really great for painting base rims. So yeah, I recommend you grab some of that. I'll link some in the description. And there's the finished product, and that's it for this one. Thanks, guys.